Welcome back to another edition of Measure Matters live from Mountain View here at Google. I'm Louis Gray.
And I'm Krista Seiden.
And we have a big show planned for you today. We're going to talk about advanced analysis. So as you know, we typically go through and talk about new updates to our product and cover the word on the street. And we want to talk a little bit about what we did last time we were here. I think I talked a lot, if I remember correctly. We basically go deep into measurement for PR. Public relations is a key point that touches marketing at all aspects, from designing the product to shaping it and putting it out in the world and having people understand exactly what it can do when it hits customers.
Yeah, and there was actually a lot of really good points that cover more than just PR in this episode, so don't think that it's not for you if you're not in PR, because there was just a lot of really good analysis tips as well.
Thank you. And so one thing we also talked a lot about was the Academy.
Yep.
We had a really big last month, actually, when it comes to new courses for the Academy, new training tools. We talked a lot about tools for Firebase, Google Analytics for power users, and even shareable certificates. So when you pass that course, you can go ahead and pass that forward and let people know. And as every single week, we have new updates with Data Studio. So we talked about Data Studio and Search Console. So let's talk a little bit about what's happened in the last few weeks. First, a look at Optimize. Optimize really is kind of coming together as a really strong and detailed product. It's just coming essential for people to really understand how their websites are working and what changes that they can make which will have direct impact. So one thing that they did I was excited about is they let you really be more in control with your experiments. If you've used Optimize to date, you'll know you can kind of set it, and then when you start it, that experiment is live right away. What they let you do now is schedule in advance and set kind of a calendar item for when these optimized experiments are occurring, and also get email notifications based on the start or end or specific results around those experiments. It really gives you a lot more control.
Yeah, and this is really great because as an analyst, you don't always have time every single day to go in and check how that test is doing. But if anything major happens or we conclude that there's a winner, we're going to email you and let you know now if you've selected to have email updates on. So it's a really nice little enhancement there.
Right, and this is something that people are used to. I mean, if they've used Google products, you can understand that you can set these in advance and you get these notifications and alerts that are personalized just for you. And we hope that all of these products continue to gain those features.
Yeah, and one other enhancement here is a new variable that we're sending as a custom dimension into analytics. So if you're familiar with how Google optimized data is sent to analytics currently, we have a few different custom dimensions set, one for variant ID, one for test experiment ID, and we are now creating a new one that is going to concatenate those two. So you actually get the experiment ID as well as the variant ID concatenated for easier analysis capabilities.
Absolutely. Thanks for covering that. And also, one big piece, and we've been really excited about it, looking forward to it for a long time, is that Data Studio is coming out of beta.
Woohoo!
It's a big deal, and what this really solidifies, it says, hey, this is a product we strongly believe in, we're going to continue developing, and you guys have really seen that as we've added new features regularly, and I think every single episode we talk about new pieces with it. And so this gives you the understanding that this is a product that we're going to be putting a lot of effort in going forward. And so more teams can identify and share insights from the data with Data Studio than ever before. It really shows the stability of the product, continued improvements, and new features as we go forward.
And I think it shows the velocity of development at Google since Gmail was in beta for 10 years?
It was from.
Yeah, Google Studio, Data Studio is only in beta for 2 years. So we're doing pretty well there, huh?
Not bad. Yeah. It also didn't launch on April Fool's Day. We were really on it. So word on the street. There's really a lot of content that I see every single day as people post helpful tips, tricks, and insights into Google Analytics, Data Studio, Optimize, and so on. And I saw a really interesting post from Orbit Media Studios. Branko Krall came up with a new recipe for goal values in Google Analytics. And as you know, measurement that is important to you is different based on what kind of business you have. If you're someone who sells content directly on your website, the measurement is pretty straightforward. You're going to understand the value of the product, how many conversions went through, the percentage, etc. But he looked at it and said, well, what are you going to measure if you have a high-value action on your website that isn't explicitly a sale? And so you can set goals and assign values with a strong analytical framework and give dollar values to each of these items. And so, the tip is really finding out the monetary value of each of these goals. So if you think a lead is worth $5, or a meeting is worth $20, or someone signing up for your newsletter is worth $8, whatever those values are, you can set them within Google Analytics and change the type of completion value to really measure what's working.
And while those values are kind of up to the user setting them, and they may or may not make sense for every business, I think the more important point here is the idea of leveraging goals for more than just e-commerce. I often hear clients say or ask me, I'm not an e-commerce client, can I use goals? Absolutely you can. There's so many different use cases, and I think this is an interesting take on that.
Absolutely, and I really like the fact when I looked at this story, and we have the URL on the screen, so you can pause the video, I'll accept that, and go ahead and check that link out, as you'll see how we leverage Tag Manager for cutting that down and understanding exactly what's going on your site, to Data Studio for visualization and the analytics with the specific goal values being set. It's a good way to use all of our pieces. Mm-hmm. And speaking of this, we talk a lot about digital marketers today, and it's important, is that marketers can gain insight into customer value. This is a report that the Harvard Business Review worked on with our Google Marketing Platform teammates to really understand how marketers are planning for the future, because the world is changing. And you can't do the same things that used to work 5 years ago, 10 years ago, or even further. You have to adjust. And so what we're finding is a lot of brands are leveraging machine learning to help shoppers make informed decisions. And we also have new challenges as we have a real focus on digital privacy or other changes that are happening globally or locally, and be able to change your adjustment to make sense based on exactly what you're seeing. And so it's a really strong report. Definitely take a look at it. The blog post went up, I believe, last week, and you can pull down the report directly from there. And one more piece on digital marketing, highlight of the week, is from Angela Hausman of Market Maven. Now, this post actually came out in early August. I want to highlight it now. It's talking about how digital marketing is changing based on the fact that we're internet first now. So what are those tools that you need as a marketing person when you think internet first? And you're seeing that these measurement pieces and analytics, as we've been saying, become increasingly important. And she thinks that we need new marketing expertise and new knowledge for a changing landscape. And this is something I can't get behind even more. Really, really strong.
I think my tool choice might be whiskey in this one.
I can't tell you what beverages to consume on your own time, but clearly this works for her post, and I liked it a lot. So I think that brings us up to really the big question. And Krista, I know you want to take us away and talk about advanced analysis techniques.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've had Google Analytics for quite some time, and we've had various ways of doing analysis in our industry, either in Google Analytics or in other tools. And I think over the last several years, we've been moving more towards this big data, deeper data exploration, both inside and outside of Google Analytics as a tool. And so I think as a tool, as a company, and as an industry, we are starting to really move into this deeper mindset when it comes to data. So a couple of things here. The first is deeper analysis with BigQuery. So Google BigQuery is one of our cloud products here at Google. It's wonderful. If you are a Google Analytics 360 customer, you actually get a export credit for all of your Analytics 360 data to BigQuery. And I'm going to go into more details about how you can actually use your analytics data in BigQuery to get even more value.
And I think we've talked about BigQuery a number of times on Measure Matters, including integration with Google Data Studio, and be able to show some of those customer reports I think Felipe was working on.
Absolutely. So in general, as marketers, as analysts, we have so many different data sources. Our data is not just coming from Google Analytics. We have CRM data, call center data, point of sale, offline marketing, cost center, third party, second party. There's just so many sources of data that we have to be able to bring together and make sense. And that is where BigQuery really can come in. It is a place where you can pump all of these different data sources together to be able to match these up based on a common user ID or whatever it is that you're analyzing them by, so that you can get a better sense of how all of those different data sets work together. So a BigQuery export really overcomes a lot of the challenges that we have as marketers and as analysts with these disparate data sources. So as I mentioned, you can join with other data sources. So you can link your analytics data to your CRM data or your user database data or any other source of data you have with a common ID. And one extra benefit of BigQuery is that you can actually get more granular data than you can get in the reporting interface of Google Analytics. And that's because you're getting the raw hit level data, which enables you to actually build robust statistical models and do some machine learning or predictive data analysis on a lot of these different data sets, and even do things like user pathing and whatnot, because you do have that time-stamped hit level data.
And you bring all this up. I think one thing we really focus on when we talk about digital marketing and reporting is your story is only as good as the data underlying it.
Yep.
And what you're talking about is combining data from multiple sources. We've talked about data blending regularly. How do you display this kind of information when it comes from multiple sources? But when BigQuery is able to put all of that in one space and you can really get into there, your stories and your information are going to be more strong and more solid than anything else out there.
Absolutely. And one of the other things that I often hear when it comes to, especially with BigQuery, but deeper data analysis in general, is that I need SQL skills to be able to access this data. And so I'm really excited to say that with Data Studio Explorer, which we've covered before, you don't actually need this anymore. So you used to have to, or you still do within the BigQuery interface, have to query your data with SQL. And that is wonderful for anybody who has SQL skills and is used to querying data tables that way. But for those analysts and marketers who don't have that skill set, we don't want you to be limited by that, which is where Data Studio Explorer comes in. You can actually now explore any of your BigQuery data using a much more visual method of dragging in the metrics and dimensions that you care about to be able to visualize those in a way to do that data analysis without SQL. So it's a really cool feature to really bring a lot of the power of BigQuery and big data to a wider audience.
And what I found is, even if you're lacking that coding experience, I mean, we are mostly on the marketing side here, and so we're not spending our day completely coding, is when in doubt, you can Google it, right? And so there's obviously Help Center with code examples, and you've got Stack Overflow. And so usually if you're coming across a kind of query for a database, you're not the first person ever to have tried it.
Totally.
And so it definitely makes sense to look out there, and if you're not sure, go ahead and get started with someone else's work.
And I just want to wrap up this section on BigQuery with a little case study to kind of show some of the power that you can get from using this. So this is a case study with a customer named Atmex. They are a precious metals company in the US. And they worked on an integration between Analytics 360 and BigQuery with one of our certified partners, Enor. And what they wanted to do, or the reason that they wanted to do that, is because their business is largely call center based. So they have an online website, you can submit a lead, but for the most part, they make all of their sales offline through call center, through reps, working these big accounts. So it was extra important to them to be able to tie this website data to all of the CRM data that they had. So what they did was they linked these they brought the analytics data into BigQuery as well as their CRM data into there. They were able to tie them together with a common user ID, and they saw several things. So one of the things that they focused on was email, and they were able to drive a 62% increase in email open rates and a 12% decrease in cost per acquisition of those leads. But one thing that's not on the slide that I think is probably the coolest aspect of this case study is that not only did they tie together their analytics data with their CRM data and use that in analytics to drive more targeted outreach, but they also sent that analytics data into their CRM system through this integration and allowed their call center reps to have much more information about what was going on with their users on the web. So now their call center reps knew when somebody had engaged with a certain email or visited a certain type of content on their site or submitted a lead or any of these different things. They had that information before they even got on the phone, and they were able to be that much more effective.
And I love hearing that because I can hear all the stories start to come together,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so we've talked previously about Google Analytics and Salesforce integration. And so as you start to connect those dots, kind of feel like you got to put that wall up, but you've got Salesforce and Google Analytics integration. We could do the CRM data, which obviously has blended data and BigQuery on the back end, and it all starts to work together. And you start to see that big picture of giving a digital marketing team and really the whole company full access to the customer journey. And so when we put these slides up that talk about customer journey and its nice, pretty colors and graphs, this is what we're talking about. This is actually seeing it in practice where they have their analytics data here and their CRM data here, and it just works together. And this is really fun to watch it come together.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's really a light bulb moment to see all of that come together and work, not just for, as you stated, your digital analyst team, but also the entire company. So that brings us to the second type of advanced analysis that we want to talk about today, and that is the actual feature called advanced analysis in Google Analytics 360. Now, I personally could not be more excited about this feature. I have helped to PM this feature along the way, and I know from my analyst side, my many years as a practitioner, that it's a great tool for doing analysis on your data in a way that you weren't necessarily able to do before in the regular reporting UI of Google Analytics. So let's dive in. The new Advanced Analysis feature set comes with 3 different techniques. The first of which is the exploration technique. Now, the best way that I can think of to describe this is essentially a table on steroids. You can add tons of different metrics and dimensions to create this Uber table, break it down by whatever dimension that you want, segment it, view your individual users, create new segments from certain areas of insight. It's very flexible and really powerful to do all sorts of analysis. The next one is the funnel technique. Now, this takes a lot of the functionality of custom funnels in Google Analytics 360 and improves upon that. So in custom funnels, we had a limit of five steps per funnel. Now, we've actually expanded that limit in the funnels technique in advanced analysis up to 10 steps, which takes care of the majority of our clients' needs in terms of how many funnel steps you really need to analyze together. We've also added the functionality to be able to analyze up to 4 segments side by side. So in this screenshot, we're looking at an analysis with 2 segments, and those are noted by the different colors, but you can imagine up to 4 different colors, 4 different segments that you're comparing side by side for this funnel. Next, you can actually break this down by any additional dimensions. If you wanted to break this down by something like age or gender or location, you can do that too. And that is really powerful to be able to see even more granularly what's going on with this funnel. And lastly, one of the great benefits of custom funnels in Google Analytics is being able to create a segment and remark it to the drop-off of any funnel step. And we've brought that feature over to funnels in advanced analysis as well. Finally, we have the segment overlap technique. Now, this is a net new technique to Google Analytics in general and to advanced analysis in Google Analytics. And what this does is it allows you to select 2 or up to 3 segments to drag and drop into this canvas that is going to then create a Venn diagram overlap of how these segments interact, as well as a table to show you in much more granular detail. Now, this is really cool for several reasons. You can break down these different segment overlaps by any dimension that you want, just like in other techniques in advanced analysis. You can add multiple metrics to analyze side by side. So for example, users and revenue per user. And you can actually create a new segment from any piece of overlap or any breakdown element of an overlap that you find interesting. So imagine how meta you can get with this analysis in these segments by creating a segment of a segment overlap of multiple segments. It's pretty cool.
And you brought this up. Interestingly, this week, Kaggle put together a survey to basically try and guess if people can figure out the revenue per user on the Google Merchandise Store. And they're running a contest. And we highlighted that on our social channels. But as I see these Venn diagrams, I'm like, don't give it away. If you use this data, you're going to get the answer to that contest. So hopefully they get a winner before the show airs.
There you go. If you're an Analytics 360 customer, check out the demo account in here and get that answer. All right, so we've talked about how cool I think all of these things are, but I actually want to go ahead and dive into a demo of these advanced analysis features because I think the best way to understand them is to see them. So let's go ahead and dive right in. And all right. I am here in my advanced analysis screen. I've already selected into a report from my home screen. And as you can see, the tab I'm on is called Exploration 3, because I have 2 others open. And right now, when I open a new exploration, I'm just going to see user count. That's the value or the metric that we have started with here. I can switch that out for anything I want, but I'm going to go ahead and leave that. And I'm going to start dragging some additional things into this report to give me more context. So right now I know that in the month of June to July, I've got 61,000 almost users in my Google Analytics Merchandise Store account. But now I think I want to break these down by country. So now I'm going to see all of my user metrics broken down by country. You can see our top 5 here. That's because I have columns 1 through 5 showing. I can change this to add several more. I'll leave it as 5 though. That's cool, but I want to bring in some rows of data so that this is more meaningful. So let's go ahead and bring in my source medium. And as you can see, I'm doing this drag and drop functionality. It's very easy to just go ahead and click on the dimension tile that I want to bring in and drag it into the area. All right, so now we have a table that's looking at rows of source medium divided by users per country. So that's a pretty nice level of granularity that we have there. But I want to look at more than just users. I want to focus on revenue as well, right? That's a pretty important metric to know for my business.
Absolutely. Especially merchandise store where you have direct revenue tied to the e-commerce aspect.
Totally. So let's go ahead and drag in revenue. And that's going to go down here under values. Oops, I accidentally replaced it. Let me drag users back in there too.
This is why it's a live demo.
Oh yeah, of course. If you hovered on top of the one you already have there, it's going to replace it. You have to put it into a new slot. So now as you can see, we have 2 columns per country here, revenue and users. And if I wanted to reorder these, that's pretty simple. I could just drag that users right above revenue again, and now users will be my primary column there. And this is really cool. You can imagine the level of granularity you can start to gain here by all of the different things that you can drag and drop and break down. One quick thing I wanted to show you is if you right click on any one of these tiles, you can do a lot of different things as well. You can include this, exclude it, you can create a segment or an audience from that selection, or you can view the users, which will take you to the individual user report in Google Analytics. So a lot of great functionality here. Okay. I had a couple other explorations open that I'd built before just to show. So here we are also looking at source medium by users, revenue, and page views. So 3 columns there. And one more where in this case, I am looking at
a loading screen.
A loading screen. I think I'm looking at a couple of segment comparisons. So I'm looking at direct traffic versus organic, and you can see they have different colors tied to the segments, as well as my rows. Instead of source medium, this time I'm looking at page. So it's got my page URL. And my metrics are users, revenue, and page views. So you can see a lot of different things going on in this exploration and a lot of value that I can gain. One thing that I like to do with a report like this is to actually build my own type of funnel, not necessarily the same as a funnel report, but something where I'm comparing a lot of different rows, a lot of different columns and dimensions broken down to understand user journeys across a lot of different elements on my site. Very good tool for that.
And what I like about this is it's so customizable. And we've seen this with Data Studio where people literally start with a blank slate and they're able to add any type of source, any type of report, any type of UI. And it's the same thing here. And like we said before, you go from having what literally is a flat database, right? It's comma separated, it's tab delimited. We all remember these things. We should be getting shivers, right? But now you have a drag and drop element where you can really build whatever you want. And as you were showing with these different explorations, you can keep them all concurrent and see what's going on and kind of go back to them later.
Yep, and that's a great point that you brought up. If I wanted to get rid of any of these, I can right click this little drop down here. There's a delete option. There's also a duplicate option. So if I've built out this really extensive report in this one tab, and maybe I want to evaluate a couple of different segments or a couple of different metrics, but with the same formatting, I can just go ahead and duplicate that exploration and change out what I want in a new tab. That way I can preserve all of the work that I've done to build out the report as I want it.
And that's, I think, how everybody works. You know, you go with what works, it's not broken, you copy it, you make a new one, you build off of that.
Exactly.
And I like how this looks, you know, if you're a power user of the web, you've got multiple tabs in your browser, and then inside one of those tabs, you have more tabs.
All right, yes, I clearly do not have tab anxiety, lots of tabs going on. Okay, so our next technique here is segment overlap. So this one, as I mentioned, I think is super cool because it is net new technology to Google Analytics. And this is a completed one. Let me actually open up a brand new one. I can do that by hitting this plus button and going to segment overlap to create a new technique. So this is what that blank one looks like. There's this blank gray circle just begging me to drop some segments in there so that we can see what the overlaps might be. So in this case, I am going to drag in, not my dimensions, my segments. Let's look at returning users, mobile traffic, and users who made a purchase. All right, so we can see that there's a lot of overlap between my returning users and made a purchase. Very little overlap between mobile traffic and making a purchase, and a little bit of overlap between returning and mobile. So we can change this out if this doesn't seem too useful for us. We can get rid of anyone that we want. Let's get rid of mobile traffic, for example, and let's look at our new users. So this one will be interesting since there won't be any overlap between, or there shouldn't be any overlap between new and returning. Okay, good. Whew, there's not. I was like, wait a second.
If the data works, yes.
But we do see made a purchase. And interestingly, at least visually, it looks like there's a pretty even split in terms of the number of purchases, not the number of new versus returning users, but returning users seem to be making more purchases. So that's an interesting insight that I'm taking away from
And
here.
not only that, but there should be no mobile purchasers, or there should be no purchasers that were never a user, right? So you effectively cut this right down the middle.
Yeah.
And I think you actually highlighted something really quickly. When you're talking about the Google Merchandise Store, you showed that people do their research on mobile and make the purchase on desktop.
Yep.
And I think we covered that 2 weeks ago. There's a lot of that where you see significant mobile traffic, and then people come back to the PC or the laptop to make a purchase.
Yep. And if we really wanted to see what the actual numbers down here in our table, they are really close for the number of purchases between the two segments. But clearly, my returning users who made a purchase is a more valuable segment since the number of purchases to returning users is higher.
Now, this is a test. Can I get you to show revenue? Like, are returning visitors going to give you more dollars per user?
Well, great question.
I'm curious.
Why don't I go ahead down to my metrics section, grab revenue, and drag it right into values.
Let's see what the answer is.
I definitely set him up for that one. And there we go. Wow. Not only is the number of purchases is somewhat equal, the value of those purchases though is 3 times as high almost with our returning users. And that's a great insight that we wouldn't have had if we hadn't have done that additional metric dragged in here. So great insights here. I think I want to make a segment and potentially remarket to these returning users who have already made a purchase. They seem very valuable to my business.
Absolutely, 3 times more.
Yes. So I'm going to go ahead and right click and create a segment or build an audience from the selection. So specifically, if I want to use this for remarketing, then I can build that audience and send that to Google Ads or Display and Video 360. Mm-hmm. So a lot of really great insight here. One other thing that I can do is I can add a breakdown. So if I wanted to break this down by, say, source and medium to see where these users are coming from when they are purchasing on our site, I can drag that right in. And that is now going to break down this table by that source and medium information. And it's going to give us, in this case, 10 rows is what we've chosen to show here. And so you can now see that the segment set has moved to the column so that you can read the breakdown, or the dimension of source medium down the rows. So a lot of really interesting information here. I'm not going to dive into analyzing this deeply, but at first glance, it looks like there's a couple of very valuable referral sites coming in through here. So a lot of great information to take advantage of and to really make your analysis that much more granular.
And we did talk about this last week when we did Measure Matters episode 9, or we're on episode 9 now. In episode 8, we talked about getting a direct link from a referral source to the revenue that's on the outside. And this is, you called it a table on steroids, it's a report on steroids. And this is really next level analysis.
Yep.
Which really has you understand the direct connection. And as a reform marketer, I kind of see all these clear campaigns that you can do with this data. We looked at the fact that returning users are 3x the dollar value. Well, there's 2 things. One, you want to reach out to those returning users and have them coming back. Mm-hmm. But I also want to make those previously one-time users come back and become returning users.
Absolutely.
And if you can pull them through that funnel and make them 3 times more valuable, you're going to do that all day long.
Yep.
And so that's exactly the type of thing where you say, aha, insight, which drives campaigns, which drives more measurement, which drives more campaigns.
Yeah. Spot on to all of that. I think this report in particular, I love to say that the funnel report is my favorite because I helped PM that one, but it's a lie. The segment and overlap report, I think, is the most powerful technique we have in here for those reasons. We are finding insights visually that we wouldn't have found any other way, that we haven't previously had the ability to break down and find in this way. And it is super, super powerful for your business. So moving on to our last technique, it's the funnels technique, my almost second favorite technique.
I'm keeping a list.
All right. And here we have an example that I've already built out, looking at people coming from organic who have viewed some kind of product on my site, added it to their cart, and checked out. Now, if we wanted to go ahead and edit the steps that we have in this funnel, it's pretty simple. We click on this steps category here. There's a little edit button. You can see the steps outlined. I can also drag and drop to move them around. But if I click that icon, now I can see my actual builder here. So I've got 4 steps built out. It's pretty simple. If I wanted to add another, I just click this plus button at the bottom and I can name it and add my conditions in there. I don't actually want to do that right now, so I'm just going to go ahead and exit out of here. So this is my simple funnel. I actually have a breakdown on. I'm going to remove that just for a second so that we can see this in its simplicity. So it's a 4-step funnel. If you hover over, you can see how the funnel moves. That's more important when we have an additional segment on. So let's go ahead and drag a segment on here. Let's look at our new versus returning users, since we just saw that there are a difference there. Now, one quick thing, I did just double click on new users. So instead of dragging it in, you can also double click on a tile and it will bring it in as well. Little quick shortcut there for you. Now, visually speaking, I love my tallest bars to be on the left. So I'm just gonna go ahead and move my returning users up above my new users up above my returning. There we go. That looks much better to me. Now, we have 2 segments applied for each of these steps, and that's where this hover functionality really comes in. Now I can see how those are looking throughout, right? But now let's go ahead, let's add another segment. I'll add direct traffic and my organic traffic. I guess all of it should be organic, right? And none of it should be direct since the first step is organic. So that didn't make sense. Come on, analyst in me. All right, we'll add making a purchase.
And this is a good example. If you find something that's reporting 0%, if there's a 0%, either there's a bug in your workflow or you're counting something that doesn't exist.
Yeah, I also just added a segment of making a purchase to a funnel about making a purchase. So, okay. Oof. I'm a little jet lagged still from my trip.
This is fine.
All right, moving on. Mobile traffic. There's one we can do. So a really quick note here, you see a bunch of segments that are out of the box in this left-hand nav. If one of the segments that you want to add to any of these techniques, not just the funnel one, is not here, you can actually click this plus button. It's going to open up the import segment editor. Now you can have up to 10 imported at a time, and you can just go ahead and check or uncheck all of the ones that you want to show up in this list. So if there is another type of segment that I wanted to bring in to be able to do my analysis on, for example, my converter segment, I can just go ahead and import that in, and you can see it very quickly show it up there in the left. Okay, so I now have a funnel with 3 segments applied over 4 steps. The last thing I want to show you here is adding that breakdown. So I'm going to go ahead and add the breakdown of device, once again, device category. Bring that right in. And now we see that easy breakdown and my segments per segment all the way down. So a lot of granularity available in this funnel. Now, as I mentioned, just like in our custom funnels report, if you right click on a step, you can create a segment from those users or build an audience from those users to be able to capture not only the people who have gotten to that step, but also the drop off from that step.
And this is what we talk about when we say turning insights into action.
Absolutely.
That's exactly what you're doing.
Yep. So that is all I have to show you with the advanced analysis techniques in Google Analytics 360. If you can't tell from my excitement, I think these are super awesome, and there is so much possibility for analysis that we've unlocked here that we didn't necessarily have before in the regular reports within Google Analytics, or at least it wasn't very easily accessible. I think that was really highlighted by the segment overlap report in general. Like, it's just a super cool report. But that's all I have here. I want to go ahead and jump back into the deck and wrap it up with our last slide.
And this is our summary. You know, we really are excited to bring all these tools, and you can tell exactly what you're talking about when you have each of these pieces. The segment overlap, I think, is really cool. Yep. So I'm kind of jealous you got to do the demo. But anyway, you know you can follow Measure Matters really every day of the week on Google Analytics or the hashtag Measure Matters. We will find it. You can follow Krista and myself on Twitter. We're happy to engage and talk about all this stuff. So big news is Krista will not be joining me for the next round of Measure Matters. We will have a special guest on October 10th talking about real time. And I know we've briefly touched on real time a number of times during Measure Matters, but this is something I'm excited about to really go deep into it and see exactly what kind of options that we have from our side and how users are leveraging it.
That's right. I'll be on vacation, but I'll have to catch up later because this is one of my favorite topics.
You are going to watch. So if you are going to stay connected, check Measure Matters, look at all our playlists, catch up on the previous 8 episodes at tinyurl.com/Measure Matters. It does matter, and we'll see you in a few weeks.
Thanks.